This week, we get a little silly, we get a lot serious. We've got a couple pieces, one silly, from 1937. Let's see if you can pick up on that old school humor as it relates to the Masonic dress. And then we read a new piece coming off the Midnight Freemasons in which one brother questions why we can't have civil discourse in a lodge, and why that matters in the grander scale of the world we live in. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 665. Right away, I want to go ahead and support our producers, contributors, fellows, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. Without your help, we can't make this program what it is today. If you're curious on how you can help support the WCY podcast to bring Masonic education and its kindred sciences to the masses interested in such topics, head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com. Click on Support the Show and check out the various options. Additionally, any services that we offer, whether those are links or products we sell on our website, all funding dollars come right back into Masonic education. Presentations. I'm going to be doing the Masonic Pub Crawl at Manassas Lodge on February 5th. I believe the date is, and it will be there in Manassas, Virginia. So if you come out and you're in the area, check it out. We'll be doing an abbreviated version of that presentation, probably keeping it to about 20-25 minutes because they'll have some additional education happening at that lodge meeting as well. Then on February 20th, I'll be doing the Masonic Pub Crawl. That same presentation I'll be doing at Lake Lodge number 50 in Silver Lake, Kansas. The very next day, I'll be premiering a brand new lecture called Mystical Legacies, unveiling the esoteric origins and historical implications of Atlantis and Lemuria. This presentation is a little bit different. It really embarks on what I would call an explorative journey into the mythological realms of Atlantis and Lemuria and how they connect to occult traditions and relate back to Masonry, and some of the issues that have cropped up due to the proliferation of misinformation and poor scholarship, and how Freemasonry is not innocent in pushing forward bad scholarship. But it'll be a fun presentation nonetheless. And then, of course, June 7th, San Antonio Esoteric Summit, which will be all day, happening there, along with a bunch of other great speakers as well. And, of course, then the next weekend is Esotericon. Tickets went live. You can pick them up at esotericon.net. This week, I am reading a piece that could be controversial. Now, in the past, we've talked about Freemasons and the decorum and the attitudes and all of these things within the lodge. And along with that, they talk about dress codes and things. Now, some lodges that are like traditional observant or observant style lodges have a dress code. Or perhaps your mother lodge has a type of dress code in which maybe they say, hey, for degree work, we wear dark suits or tuxes, and for all the other meetings, just a jeans and a button-up shirt would be okay. Well, regardless of what your lodge does, this was an interesting article that was published in May of 1937. And keep in mind as we read this article that, of course, times have changed, and so the language here may be a little bit different. But here we go. This is called To the Master Belong the Dress Clothes by William L.B. Nye. To the worshipful master belong the tuxedo, or tails he loses, as the case may be. To the sideliners he seems serene and courtly, but within is a secret pain that he cannot locate or diagnose. Whence comes this discomfort? Has he been partaking unwisely of the succulent hamburger, smothered in the odoriferous onion? And how is it he contrives to appear so immaculate and feel so miserable? Perhaps the worshipful has just emerged from a hot tub where what with diligent scraping and scrubbing, he has successfully erased the results of his day of toil beneath the vitals of a streamlined Greyhound bus, or within the bowels of a subway excavation. The sudden change has upset his poise and made him a prey to his own fanciful imaginings and obsessions. He feels like a porcupine just emerged from the barber shop with a haircut and a shave, and a hot towel still wrapped about his ears. All this is in accordance with the rules of the game. For the master is obligated to cling stubbornly to Masonic tradition, which has it that, quote-unquote, to the master belong the dress clothes. A tradition that has come down to us from ancient brethren, through the ages with periodic changes as to style and comfort, beginning with the official toggery of King Solomon himself. The up-to-date attire of the master is probably a compromise between the suit of mail, with knee action, four-wheel brakes and bumpers, front and rear, and the fluff and ruffles of a latter period. When fully costumed for the kill, every Sir Knight of the Middle Ages was an armored tank in himself. He looked like a battleship, but lacked its buoyancy. To sneeze or to scratch a bite were major operations, invariably resulting in bloody noses, black eyes, scalp wounds, and sundry gashes and bruises on and about the anatomy. Many a knight was known to have cut his own throat and bled to death in attempting to swallow his Adam's apple when suddenly confronted by a well-prepared and hostile adversary. It was during the epoch of the metallic dress suit that, far from prying eyes, Masonic lodges were held in remote valleys, concealed by the mountain shadows. Indoor meetings were not appropriate because of the wear and tear on the furniture and decorations. Masters were hoisted to their stations on projecting rocks by means of a crude contrivance resembling a block and fall, the sideliners arranging themselves comfortably right and left. Masters trying to get around in those days found it hard going with all their hardware. But try to imagine the trials and tribulations of a district deputy. The next important step in the evolution of the master's regalia was from metallics to the delicate costumes characterized by full-length stockings, long shorts, or -4s with monkey coat decorated with lace frills and furbelows, and a platinum blonde wig, the whole topped off by a three-cornered hat with traffic lights on each corner. A layout like that set the master back considerably, especially when yea good spouse could not crochet or hemstitch. For a lady who could wield the needle, however, it was no trick at all, from a discarded hoop skirt and a pair of +8s, to lay out an outfit suitable to grace any master's station. To the partially bald, and to those who had reached that state completely, the customary wig was a blessing indeed. It covered the shiny surface of his pate perfectly and added dignity to his otherwise mundane appearance. With his tri-cornered hat and silver buckles on his shoes, a worshipful was irresistible, his pride only slightly affected by a lingering fear that at any moment something might rip. Emerging from the tin can era into the lace and ruffles period, lodges moved from the outer to the inside, placing new responsibilities on the master with respect to his go-to meeting clothes. No longer could he hide his curves and angles behind sheet iron or to keep his avoirdupois a dark secret with an oversized boiler. He must deck himself out in form-fitting garments and display his imperfections to all the world, and especially to his brethren. For years he may have been able to keep the secret of a bowed leg or a knock knee from everyone except his horse and his wife. Now, however, these defects became public property, and not only could you on occasion hear, but you could behold his knees in the process of knocking. As time went on, the master's regalia and lodge meeting rooms became more and more decorative. Members found themselves meeting in rooms of Tuscan, Doric, and Ionic designs, and masters strutted in and out in costumes created in Bond Street, the Rue de la Paix, or Fifth Avenue, or fairly good imitations. Delicate and varied combinations became the envy of wives and sweethearts, but the master's anxiety centered about that hope that he would not get caught in the rain. Excessive dampness often gave him the appearance of a tattooed man fallen into a tank of citrus seals, disturbing the calm and equanimity of the sideliners and upsetting lodge dignity altogether. Intelligence applied to any problem results in improvement. The axiom is true of the master's dress clothes, or any clothes for that matter. True perfection in attire has not even yet been reached. Yet it must be admitted that the go-to meeting get-up of the present day is far superior in design and comfort, of not in artistry, to any of that has gone before. True King Solomon's full dress has not yet gone out of style. It is widely used in hiding away the bedroom brand of pajamas, and in its more decorative state in lounging around the old den or living room on days off. The Sir Knight costumes of the age of iron is still represented in the stiff bosom shirt worn as a background for the full dress suit, but the fluff and ruffles of the latter period are no longer with us except at masquerade balls and the movies. Evolution is a slow process, but it is possible that in the not-far-distant future, worshipfuls may be able to preside at lodge meeting comfortably, as well as appropriately attired. The windshield, no draft ventilation shirt bosom, is already giving way to a soft silky material that conforms to the movements of the torso without cracking or otherwise marring the surface. Judging from the rapidity of change in fashioning man's habiliments, by the year 2037 the rigid shirt front will have died without mourners, eventually to find a place in a museum beside the Indian pottery and the wampum, and the day may come when dress clothes may be streamlined, with new models in season requiring correct corseting, or maybe we will wear just a shirt. The Masonic Outlook. Alright, I found that article immensely humorous. Certainly I think the author's coming at this from a point of ridiculousness, as it were, thinking about all of the garments and the get-up that we are required to wear, certainly complaining about the comfort level of such garments. He says in 2037 maybe we'll have something great. I think it's 2025 now, and we have some pretty comfortable clothes, but the struggle is real when he talks about wearing tight-fitting clothes after eating a meal and all of these kinds of things. I found myself smirking almost the entire article. The next article I have comes from a good friend of mine and a Midnight Freemason guest contributor, Brother Kevin Homan. Brother Kevin is an experienced Freemason who's been around the block more than a few times. He's also penned a number of articles on his own blog, which is on Medium, and I value Kevin's input on just about anything he tends to write on. I have to say, we have read some pieces of his before that he's penned on Medium, and he and I have actually both worked on some rather what would be considered controversial articles together in the past. But for this particular piece, this is just Brother Kevin, and he wrote this piece, which was published on the Midnight Freemasons recently on January 15th. It's called Tough but Crucial Conversations. Before the early hours of December 4th, 2024, had you asked the average American who Brian Thompson or United Healthcare was, you would have probably gotten a quizzical look back in return. Now you can hardly escape a day on social media without seeing a meme or praise for Luigi Mangione or Thompson. In typical American fashion, the division was immediate, and it was stark. Much like school shootings, now is not the time to be politicizing these acts. Thoughts and prayers must be with the family of the victims. Now, please don't get me wrong. Mr. Thompson's murder is a tragedy. A wife lost her husband, and child lost their father. One man allegedly murdered another man. Any way you slice it, that is a tragedy. While it is still early, and we only have the alleged gunman's writings to go on, one cannot immediately think of the current state of the American insurance system and not admit our system is broken. A week or two before our election, I was walking my daughter to school when she asked one of our neighbors who was out walking their dog who she had voted for. She responded in the typical American fashion, "Who we vote for is private." I, of course, immediately thought of the Masonic prohibition of speaking of religion and politics within the tiled space of a lodge, which we frequently conflate to include just about everywhere else. I'm not claiming we should be having these conversations in lodge. We shouldn't be. What I am claiming is, as a fraternity and as a society, we need to stop hiding behind this idea that we can't have difficult conversations. Conversations that need to be had, mind you, in the aftermath of a tragedy. Quite the opposite. The immediate aftermath of tragedies like this is the best time to have these conversations. Otherwise, in our frantic media cycle, we forget and move on to the next squirrel takes up the airwaves. That said, the sad reality today is that we do not discuss political or religious topics as Masons because it will cause disharmony, but because a majority of Masons cannot subdue their passions and debate rationally. Instead of being the example to society we claim to be, I see a majority of Masons making uninformed and abhorrent statements. Instead of engaging in civil discourse and being the light in the darkness, I have witnessed Masons call Masonic widows groomers. This country needs to discuss the state of the insurance industry and how it puts profit before the health of its customers. This country needs to discuss meaningfully why school shootings continue to happen. This country needs to meaningfully discuss the border crisis and how we can best plan to solve it in a way that adequately addresses everyone's needs. There was a time when Masonry had the courage and the ability to lead the rational discourse, and needed to thoughtfully solve problems such as these, but no more. No more because our membership is just as polarized as the country, despite our ritual saying we are different. Despite us saying we are different, we are no different than society. Brethren, we are not better. By and large, we cannot subdue our passions, and by and large, we've lost the stomach to be the change society needs. If you doubt what I'm saying, I encourage you to look closely at what your fellow brethren are saying online. This is the state of the fraternity, all because we're afraid to have tough conversations. We are afraid of this because despite our claim being able to subdue our passions, we can't subdue our passions. We are afraid to have tough conversations because we're afraid of what it might reveal about ourselves. How do we once again become the organization we tell ourselves it is? How are we truly going to become the light to society we continually tell ourselves we are? Brother Holman has been a Freemason for 18 years and is a member of Olive Branch Lodge in Leesburg, Virginia. He's also a member of multiple appendant bodies. Masonically, Kevin is interested in education, currently serving as his lodge's education officer, as well as a regional provost on the Grand Lodge Committee of Education. Outside of Masonry, Kevin is either transporting his kids to their various activities or can be found on the track in his 1997 Mazda Miata. Brother Kevin brings a point, a more modern take, I think, on something that I think we've asked ourselves for a long time, which is Freemasonry for the long haul has been saying that it was on the forefront of the betterment of humanity, that we're here to leave this place better than we came into it. And certainly we do that by becoming active in our communities and whatnot. And I think where Kevin is going with this is that, by and large, the types of Masons of the past who found themselves active in community things are generally not into those same endeavors today. And I think we can solve a great deal of this is by becoming active in our communities, being civically engaged. And if, hey, along the way somebody realizes you're a Freemason, well, that's okay too. That's how we become at the forefront of the betterment of society. I think, certainly I could be wrong, but I do believe Brother Kevin brings up a great point. If you'd like some expanded thoughts on this of my own, you can read a piece that I've penned and is up on thecivicfreemason.com called Why Banning Politics and Religion in Lodge is a Bad Idea. Now, I know that might trigger you, and it's kind of designed to. So enjoy the article if you choose to read it. But there we have these two pieces this week, one a little bit more on the silly side, one on the exact opposite side. It's pretty serious. And I hope you had a good listen and you learned a little something about yourself. I know I did. And we'll talk to you all next week. So before we sign off, one more time, I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners. Again, if you're out there and you're thinking, hey, I listen to the show all the time, or even sporadically, I share it with my friends and stuff. How can I help support the show? Real easy. Just hop on your phone, wcypodcast.com, click on support the show. You can go through Patreon or PayPal, make donations, or buy leather keychains or any of the leather works that I do. Or you can help support by buying direct from me whenever I'm at symposiums or whatever, selling anything that I'm making or selling is all going back into Masonic education. So I'll be having a booth for sure at Esotericon 2025 and be a lot of fun. So anyway, thanks again so much for listening. Until next week, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
Well, you guys beat me as no.